hearing some comments about my truck here. I know some folks want to get some updates on it, what's going on with it, what are my plans for it. I haven't shown it a lot on the channel, and that's really because I've been, featuring my new Cobra. Unfortunately, I thrashed on getting the Cobra, complete all the suspension work, dropped it off the muffler shop. Basically, I wanted to get it aligned. I wanted to get the exhaust done. That was Saturday morning, first thing 8 a.m. And I think they've been swamped. Ran into a couple little issues with the exhaust fitment and things like that. So unfortunately, it's now Tuesday and I still don't have it back. And I'm pretty bummed. But I'm gonna take this opportunity to kind of tell you some good news, some plans, and potentially some bad news actually for the truck. So first, let's talk about the good news. So what I'm planning on doing is, there's a local drag strip by me. Unfortunately, it is 1/8 mile. I would love to take this thing to the 1/4 mile, but unfortunately it is 1/8 mile. It is also the highest elevation track, or so I'm told, in the country. It's called Hypoxia Dragway. It's about an hour and 15 minutes away in Wyoming. I'm gonna take this here, hopefully, when I get to the next part of this video, I tell you some of the issues. I'm hoping to take this there in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Just run some 1/8 mile. I'm not expecting to set any super, crazy fast times because, like I said, I want to see the tracks at like 6,000 feet elevation. It is 1/8 mile. It's a pretty much like a family run and operated, pretty very basic bare bones situation. But it'll be fun to go do, line up with some people, do some grudge racing, potentially surprise, some folks with the old big block Chevy. So I am excited for that. But I have some negatives that I want to talk about. Let's get into that now. My oil pressure gauge is down here. I don't have one tied in with the Holley Sniper. But basically, looking at the gauge, I would get on the gas. Let's say it's idling, it's 20 PSI. I get on the gas and immediately it jumps up. What I noticed is as I got up into the higher RPMs, it would climb and then it would start to drop. And that's very bad. You don't want to see that. You generally want to see, 10 PSI minimum per, 1,000 RPM. So that is not good. So I would expect to see on this thing, at Redline, at least 50, 60 PSI. I got done doing a pull the other day, shifted probably about 5,500. It was down around 20 PSI. So that really startled me. And I got to thinking of what it could be. So I recently did the oil pan, the new oil pump pickup tube, which was measured, and obviously fresh oil. So a couple things that I think it might be, and I really need to address this before I take it to the track because you really can't take it to the track and risk low oil pressure, spin a bearing, do something bad. So I need to get this figured out, and that's what I'm gonna try and do. I did when I installed everything was a new dipstick. Now, this engine does have a slight oil leak. From what I can tell, it's coming from the oil pan gasket at the timing cover. It's my own fault. It just doesn't seal right. And it's kind of a pain in the ass to replace the oil pan gasket with this larger pan. So coupled with the fact that I do like to try and make sure the oil is topped off, and I'm always pretty, I always try to look at the, read the oil, make sure it's got a good level. But what I've noticed is, for whatever reason, I don't get consistent readings. Literally back-to-back readings will be different. I'm hoping what my problem is that I've filled it with too much oil, and the oil is getting whipped up by the crank. And in doing so, basically I'm getting low oil pressure as it gets more and more whipped up and aerated. That's what I'm hoping. So what I'm gonna do to start is I'm gonna drain all the oil out. I'm gonna measure it. And this pan should hold 6 quarts plus another quart for the filter. I'm not gonna take the filter out yet. What I'm gonna do is drain it out, measure exactly how much I have in the pan. It's been sitting for a while, so it should all be down there in the pan. If I see 7 quarts or 6.5 quarts, I'm gonna bring it down to exactly 6 quarts, go out and drive it and see. If I get into a position where it's still bad, I may try to drop down by a 1/2 quart or even a full quart to see if it solves the problem, because I've heard sometimes too much oil can cause this problem. So we are gonna see what happens. Let's go ahead and get started and try and measure out the oil very carefully, and let's see how much is actually in there. Again, we're shooting for 6 quarts. I'll save you the part where you drain all the oil out of your motor. You just want to be careful that you don't spill any here, and you want to make sure that whatever you're draining into is fully empty. I chose to use just a kitchen style measuring device. Unfortunately, it's in cups, so you see me make a lot of pours, but keep track of that on a piece of paper so you know exactly how much you took out. Okay, what I determined is two things. One, we're gonna find out how much my wife uses that measuring cup. Two, we're gonna see how much of a difference it makes just being a little bit low. So again, this is just the pan, and it's possible that I didn't get every little last bit of drop accounted for, but based on using that, I got about 21.5 cups, which equals 5.37, 5.4 quarts. So you're a little over half a quart low. I would hope that a half a quart would not make or break what we're seeing there. That's pretty odd to me. Yeah, on the flip side, I was expecting, maybe 4 quarts or something like that, something way low. So being off by half a quart, I don't think should be enough to see what I'm seeing. A little bit baffled. I think what I'm going to do is change the oil, put fresh oil in it, put a new filter in it. Make sure I put exactly 6 quarts in the pan. So I'm gonna probably let this drain a little bit, run out, get every little last drop out of the pan, measure again, and then from there, top it off with the correct amount, which I believe should be 6 quarts. I'll triple check that. And we'll go from there and we'll see. But it's very odd to me what I'm seeing, because it's not that much difference, and yet I'm getting a drop in oil pressure. So I will be changing to another. I'm torn as to whether to put too little oil in to start and test it, or the correct amount of oil in to start and test it. The only reason that I would put in less is easier to add oil than to subtract. What I think I'm gonna do, even though it's gonna be kind of a pain, is put exactly 6 quarts in, fill the oil filter up. I've got a brand new filter, and just see if 6 quarts with a brand new filter makes any bit of difference. Because that's the correct amount. And then from there, if it doesn't, we can start backing quarts out. Probably start back with 5, maybe go down to 4.5. I don't think I'll go much lower than that, and just see, if that works. We're gonna use the same stuff I put in the Cobra, which is that Quaker State Advanced Full Synthetic 5W30. And before you guys go all crazy about, 5W30 in a big block Chevy, I was running 1030 before, okay? And my cold oil pressure was good. So don't get hung up on the 5. They're both 30 weight oils, okay? If I was getting a ton of noise on startup, that would probably be the only reason to really consider a thicker weight oil in startup. But the difference between the 5 and the 30 really shouldn't matter. If anything, the oil that I'm putting in should be a lot better. I'm following the whole thing I told you about, that guy who did the oil comparison with 215 oils or whatever. So I'm sticking with that. Let's see if it makes a difference. Opted for a K&N filter, that's what they had. It's not taking quite a full quart. I mean, it's damn close, but I can't get it to take quite a full quart here, which is kind of interesting because I really want to get these exact. So this is just shy of a full quart in there. It's a 6 quart pan. So what we're gonna do is install that as is. I may have even put a little too much in there, but we're gonna install that as is. And then add 6 quarts to the motor. And then that will be our starting point. I have a feeling that this is not gonna fix the problem. I think I may have had too much oil to begin with, but because it came back about a half quart low, I don't know, we gotta try this first. Okay, filled it up, 6 quarts of the good stuff, went out there and drove it. At first, it did seem like I had solved the problem, but what I will say is for consistency's sake, you do wanna make sure that the oil is up to temperature, because a cold, thick oil, you're not gonna get accurate back-to-back results. So like I said, I filled it up with 6 quarts, I went out and drove it. At first, I thought the problem was solved. However, as I let the oil heat up and I got on it harder and harder, eventually oil was fully warm. Both fans had kicked on, coolant temp was up, really hammered it hard in first gear, and same thing. Maybe slightly less than last time, but it's hard to tell. Oil pressure still dropped. So what I did was I went ahead and I took out just shy of a full quart. This is roughly 30 ounces that was removed. And I removed 30 ounces because I spilled some on the way out trying to undo the drain plug with a hot oil pan and drain some oil. So roughly took 1 quart out, and then I went back and drove it again. So here's some clips of me driving it that second time. I beat on this thing. I mean, I drove it really hard. I did dead stop first gear pulls with a fully up to temp. I did highway pulls. I did all kinds of things to try and get that oil pressure to drop. And what I found was when you took 1 full quart out, it no longer dropped. So I think this is a classic example of the quart or the pan calls for 6 quarts, but in this application, for whatever reason, 5 quarts is more accurately what it wants. So what you're gonna wanna do is come back. If your truck's like mine, has a slight oil leak, you wanna do this soon so you get an accurate measurement. Come back, park on a level ground, let it sit for a little bit, and then check the oil like 3 times and mark on the dipstick where the true new full is, because it's not gonna be between the marks because you took a quart out. But I'd rather have a quart out than have the oil pressure drop under hard acceleration. So gonna run it with 5 quarts, gonna keep an eye on it. I think that should be totally fine. Some people might be a little afraid by that, but again, gonna run with 5 quarts, and I think we are good for this upcoming week or so at the drag strip. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something here. Just like my other videos, it's a lot of trial and error. I don't claim to know everything the first time out, and this is a perfect example of that. So what I plan to do now is drive a little bit more. I've got a fresh oil, fresh filter in it. I'm gonna make sure that I keep it right at that new full mark, and then take this thing to the drag strip and see what it runs. Like I said, the drag strip is at 6,600 feet elevation. So don't try and baseline what this thing does versus what your big block or small block might do at your local drag strip, because unless yours is the second highest in the country, it's gonna run slower. Nonetheless, I think it'll be a good learning experience. Like any trip to the track, the best I can hope for is I don't break anything. So trust me, there will be footage of that when it happens. So I look forward to shooting that video. Hopefully you guys look forward to watching it. Just like every other time, please like and subscribe. I'm over 900 subscribers now, and my goal is 1,000. So please help me get there. If you have questions or comments, please leave them. I read all of them, and I try to get back to you. Enjoy the rest of your day.